What's up? Welcome to Knotfest Preludes. I'm your host, Monica Strut, and today I am here with Liam from Windwaker. Welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me.
I gotta say, this is like the coolest interview set that I've had so far. All of my interviews have been on Zoom, so thanks for joining me in person.
No worries. Thank you for having me in person. So.
Awesome. So, I mean, Windwaker embarked on a huge headline run last year, and I know that you yourself and the band are no stranger to playing festivals as well. First up, tell me how that headline run went, because that was absolutely huge. Yeah. And I would love to know also, like, from your experience playing festivals, what's the difference between headlining a show and then playing a festival?
Wow. Well, first of all, the headline tour was amazing. It was the first time I'd gotten to go over to WA and play a Perth show, and that started the tour, and that was a sold-out show. So, absolutely no complaints there. The rest of the run were just like the biggest venues that we'd ever headlined. Like we got to play sold out Max Watts show, which was just like an electric show. We took a bunch of cameras with us and filmed a bunch of cool content from that as well. So getting to play like some of these venues, getting to play like the Bright Side outside, the outdoor stage, just like a sea of people. So every show was great, and then despite maybe my physical symptoms kicking in, I got quite sick towards the end of it. It was quite a bit full on, but no, I loved it. It was one of my favourite tours that we'd ever done, and having Caskets come over was amazing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like was it because like you were exerting yourself so much as a vocalist?
Yeah, I think it was just like the routing, like that Perth to then playing Adelaide straight after that, and then like Melbourne straight after that. Like in those. It's a long way distance-wise.
It's like kicking off with like the biggest one.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, you can always get things in the airport and in planes and stuff like that. So I probably just got something. I mean, also having international people as well. You don't know what's being brought over. No offense, Caskets. No offense,
But
and the difference between playing a headline show versus a festival, I think it's just the overall like crowd energy. I think like there's something about being outdoors, that's and the daytime as well. There's just like a different energy. People have maybe haven't worked during the day and then are going to a gig at night time. It's just like everyone's there for the day. They're there with a specific function to see some great live music.
They're invested.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love playing festivals. I think they're just like they're one of the funnest types of shows to play. So the headline shows I feel like are a little bit more. There's more pressure if you're the headlining band. You have to bring the crowd, whereas sometimes the crowds might already be there for the rest of the bands on the festival. So
it's interesting because there would be a lot of people at festivals as well that would be discovering you for the first time. So I guess for anyone discovering you for the first time at Knotfest, what is like the quintessential Windwaker lore that people need to know?
The lore, maybe that I used to be in the band. Once upon a time I was a guitarist. So I'm still a familiar face in that sense. But I guess all you need to know is that we are genre-bending pop, metal, hip-hop, new metal. I don't know. It's like it's an amalgamation of a lot of things. And I don't know. What I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think that's like important to mention because I did want to touch upon it as well. So like you were the guitarist in the band, and then you left and you have your own project, 𝐷𝑒𝑠𝑇, and then you came back as the vocalist when there was that change going on. So what was because Windy had already released a great album,
their debut album,
like, in between times. So coming back, like what was the process to like learn all these new songs and kind of I guess like fill these shoes and then make it your own? Great
question. It was a massive process, and it felt like an uphill battle at the beginning. But I auditioned, and the two songs that I auditioned were Superstitious Fantasy and Beautiful. And at that time I had no experience doing any sort of screaming really. Like I'd probably had a little bit of experience with 𝐷𝑒𝑠𝑇 doing like sort of like pitched screams, but they weren't like kind of in that heavy metal sort of adjacent sound. So it was a big learning curve for me, learning how to do fry screams properly and switching between false chords and at the time too, like not to get too technical, but like the only fry scream that I really had was like sort of like a higher sort of one. So I sort of had to then figure out how to make that sound lower, because that was something that was very intrinsic in Will's sort of sound as well, having sort of a lower, gruntier kind of fry. So at first it felt like a bit like doing karaoke numbers, and like I'd not just having a lack of experience with heavy vocals, but just also performing in that capacity as well.
Not having that barrier of an instrument in front of you would
Exactly.
be very confronting, I imagine.
And also, like, just being in that format of a heavy band, you know, like, I think a lot of my history has been, like, fronting sort of, like, punk bands and doing hip-hop stuff in my, you know, youth. So I sort of had a style of performing that I had grown accustomed to, and then, you know, you kind of get into your own head and think about, oh, well, is there certain things that a metal vocalist is supposed to do, you know?
Yeah,
and so I was sort of studying and looking at what other frontmen and women did in that context. And that was, look, it took a few shows from, like, the very beginning, like, we did Enter Shikari. I think there was 2 or 3 shows where I was still sort of figuring that out and what my stage presence would look like. But as we've, like, gone on and created new music since then, I think it's become a lot more easy and a lot more natural, and it probably feels a little bit less sort of impostery, like I'm stepping in and doing someone else's songs. They're now becoming my own, and I'm able to tell my story through that. So it's gotten a lot more easier to just be myself and be a little bit more authentic, I guess. But it's been a big learning curve. I'm still learning. Learning lots of things.
Well, I'm curious, like, back when you were saying, like, just because I'm like I love, like, hearing about how people, like, learn how to scream in particular. So with those lows that you were talking about, because you do a lot of lows now, and we're going to go into the EP that you're dropping tomorrow at the time of filming. Quite a lot of lows. So are you using more, like, false chord technique there?
Yeah, I in the recording process definitely was using a lot more of that, and we funnily enough, when we were making The Wall and recording the vocals for it, we kept coming up with, like, little nicknames for, like, the different types of screams and different voices that I had. Yeah. And the one that you hear in The Wall was we nicknamed the Corey Taylor scream, which I think is just kind of ironic, given that we're on Knotfest. So, yeah. But in a live setting, I find it just quite natural to pitch down the fry scream. So I can get away with kind of bridging the two and going between the two. So it differs on the night depending on what maybe effect I'm trying to get on a particular line. But yeah, for The Wall in particular, a lot of it was false chords and learning that balance of not letting out all my air at once so that I could only scream for about 2.5 seconds. You know, so trying to balance out the airflow as well as what's actually happening with my vocal folds as well, and making myself sustain for a lot longer. So that's, I don't know.
Well, let's, like, dive into the EP. So you've got Enter the Wall coming out on Friday the 15th. Or is it the 16th? What's the date today? No, the 15th. Tomorrow's the 15th.
It is the 15th. You're right. Yes, that sounded right. Okay.
So we've got The Wall coming out on Friday the 15th of March, or Enter the Wall, the EP coming out on Friday the 15th of March, which is really exciting. It's a 4-track EP, and I'd love to just chat to you track by track, because I know that a lot of, as well, like, if you could touch upon not only, like, the meaning of the track, but also if you can remember, like, any tidbits from recording, because I know a lot of Windwaker's recording process, you guys actually go away a lot together, and you do like writing retreats to kind of formulate ideas. So take us through track 1, which is The Wall. Tell us about it.
The Wall was is an interesting track. It's a track that existed before I'd rejoined the band. So Jesse, our guitarist, had this demo where he was experimenting with sort of beats and sort of a hip hop kind of influence, and then combining that with sort of, I don't know, chaotic guitar and glitchy sounds. And so by the time that I got to get my hands on it, it was pretty much a fully fledged instrumental that I could just...
That's kind of fun.
It was cool. So for me, I had to sort of pay attention to what kind of world that song was living in, because it didn't sound like anything else that we had at the time. So for me, I was thinking about kind of getting, like, what are those, like, moments where you're getting a bit paranoid or you're staring off into the void and, like, you know, your brain just kind of goes down these, like, dark trails of thought. And I had this imagery, which I think I've probably got from, like, a cartoon, like a weird, like, Rick and Morty type cartoon, where, like, I was just, like, imagining sitting on a couch and you're staring off into the void, and then there's, like, a black hole that just kind of starts sucking away pieces of the room, and you know, like, bits of your skin are falling. Like, that's kind of, like, the imagery I had in my mind. And again, going back to that learning curve we were talking about before, like, what do I write about in a metal capacity, you know? So this was sort of an experiment for me to kind of go a bit darker and explore those parts of my mind a little bit, and just going, like, oh, what happens to your brain when you're all paranoid and you're thinking about things and it's going around in circles. And so that's kind of where the wall came from.
That's cool. And I could definitely see, like, an episode of Rick and Morty where like your skin's getting, like, sucked out, like
you just become like this, just your whole meat suit comes off and you're just the skeleton left, you know. I thought what is it, the sky pulls away in the distance and now the panic sets in. It's just like, it's about kind of getting really anxious and getting in your own thoughts. So
and the video clip that you've got for it, it's very, like, Blair Witchy, and it does, like, definitely induce that, like, that anxiety, because I feel like you watched the start of the video and I was like, am I just watching a windy, like, documentary on the writing process, because you're all just chatting
and we're just on the road in the middle of nowhere.
So where did the idea for the video come from?
I believe that was a collective effort between Connor, Indy, and Andrew, our videographer. And it was honestly just a bit of an excuse to make for a really just fun kind of bootleg looking video. We'd bought like an old DV camera, as well as, you know, bringing, like, some of the high fidelity cameras as well. But we wanted to really just make it look like a found footage thing. So we'd even recorded bits of us driving to the location, kind of set up this scenario that, you know, we got possessed in the woods sort of thing. We basically just did a road trip out to, I think, somewhere out near Ballarat. At night time. We just filmed overnight, which was really creepy because we thought we could hear things, like, actually hear things.
It's like this immersive experience.
So I mean, maybe there was, like, a bit of method acting or something. I don't know. We're like, oh, maybe some weirdo with a shotgun's gonna hear, like, all these drum hits in the middle of the woods and think that they're gunshots and they're gonna come looking for us or something. God. So it was a bit tense, but also, like, it was just a hell of a lot of fun. We could just basically, like, a lot of the inspo came from, like, some of, like, the lo-fi clips of, like, I don't know if you're familiar with, like, Joji. Some of his clips are, like, these just, like, kind of found footage compilations of just, like, people being kind of hoodlums, and that was kind of the inspo for it. It was like, well, let's combine that with Blair Witch and come up with some sort of video for the wall.
That makes complete sense. Definitely, like definitely suits that vibe. And so the track 2, Villain, Villain, it will be the track that no one's heard yet, so when the EP drops, it'll be like a fresh new track along with the wall as well. But what can you tell us about this song?
So Villain, I should say. Villain came around as one of the first songs after I joined the band. It was, I think, either the first or second writing retreat that we did. And with the songs that we had sort of hanging around from the transition from Will and the new stuff, this was sort of the first one that we were like, okay, we need to have, like, a radio rock, arena rock sort of song that feels very true to what, you know, we've established with our sort of metalcore brand of metalcore sound. So that song came about because we were thinking a lot, like, a lot of us were going through quite a turbulent year, like the band members included, with, you know, losing a vocalist and stuff like that, and I was also dealing with other personal loss as well, I got me thinking about, you know, the idea of people living on in this physical realm through memories. And so, like, you know, we can look back fondly on certain types of relationships, but what happens when those people still kind of haunt and, remain in your memories, and what is that like when it's somebody that you don't sort of look back on so fondly, or at least have fond memories with. So so that's kind of where that song started for me lyrically. But yeah, the main sort of objective for us was creating the first sort of arena rock metalcore song that had my face to it, or my voice to it, I should say.
I mean, Wind Waker are like not a band to shy away from like huge chorus.
Yeah, well, that was it. And that, I think, honestly, with the songs that we have, I think it might be the hardest song vocally to get. I've been drilling down on that song in particular for Knotfest. So yeah, we'll be playing that song.
So will you be playing the full EP?
Yeah, so all 4 of the songs on the EP will be playing, as well as a select few from Love Language. So it's pretty much just like high intensity, high energy for the entire thing. We don't really like Villain will probably be the most ballad like song in the set. I think my count, I think there's about 8 songs we've managed to squeeze in. So
nice. Yeah.
So yeah, all 4 songs on Into the Wall will be played at Knotfest.
So Fractured State of Mind is the next track, and a lot of people would have already heard the track because it's been released as the previous single with a wild, like, high energy music video, which I absolutely love. But for those that haven't heard it, what do you have to say about Fractured State of Mind?
Fractured State of Mind was also one of the darker songs in the batch of songs that we've been making. It was probably the heaviest one before we sort of started tackling the wall at the time, and it explores a few different things vocally. I mean, there's sort of a new kind of gravelly rap part that I'd never had done that sort of voice before, and I know it pops up on the wall as well.
Yeah.
But at that time, working on Fractured, it felt ridiculous at the time because I wasn't used to doing it, but I was like, just got to trust the process, got to trust the result. So yeah, tackling or exploring some different voices and stuff like that. But that song was started by Chris, and that was almost like the response to the wall. So if Jesse had already started the wall and made the instrumental, this was sort of like, all right, this is Chris's version of trying to make like a really riffy, high intensity, glitchy sort of song.
Yeah.
But then also have that big chorus that can be an earworm and stay in your head. So yeah, that song, I think that came about maybe on the 3rd writing retreat that we'd done.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, that was a big group effort, that song, because it started with Chris. He probably started it in the morning, and then we'd all started waking up at about 10 o'clock, and we're like, oh, what are you doing?
Yeah,
and then what are you working on? And then it's just it was the first riff, getting all the little noodly parts in there, and
nice.
Yeah.
And the EP ends with Sirens, which is very I guess one of the sweetest tracks on the 4-track. And again, you have released it as a single, but tell us about the meaning behind the track.
So Sirens it's kind of my allegory for witnessing all the different voices on social media and society as well. There's a lot of conflicting things, and there's a lot of people that have different intentions, and they'll manipulate if they're given the opportunity. And that was kind of my way of coming up with a nice little earworm that kind of summed all of that up, at least for me, in my experience of just observing how people behave. Over the last few years, my songwriting has kind of gone from being very introspective and internal to more looking around at what I see and just making a comment on that. So yeah, for Sirens, it was about what external things were happening that kind of were playing on my mind. Yeah, that's probably the best way I can describe Sirens. It felt like Sirens being sort of this figure that's pulling you in, and then also kind of being a warning sign as well, you know?
Yeah.
So I was playing off that sort of metaphor a bit and going between the two. So yeah.
Rad. Well, lastly, we've got this meet and greet comp for Windy, this ultimate Knotfest experience where one lucky winner can watch the set from the side of the stage.
Yeah,
Which I think is fucking rad, and like with in-ears as well, as you just said, which means crystal clear sound.
Yeah.
Because for anyone that's watched a show from the side of the stage, like you don't really hear.
You just hear drums. And that's it.
Yeah, so it's going to be this really cool, like clear experience that I would say, like, the only way to really have that experience without being directly on the stage.
Exactly.
With the band.
Yeah.
And then lunch afterwards.
Yeah, you get to watch me devour an obscene amount of food against
God.
my.
What is like your go-to like catering food? Like, if the festival has catering, like, what's?
I don't know. We just lost the light.
We're almost at the end.
We're almost at the end. Yeah, I don't know.
Fix it in post.
You'll fix it in post. Just brighten this side up. I don't have a particular thing, but I do try to avoid a lot of like dairy and stuff before a set.
Yeah.
After a set, it's just like
free for all.
Free for all.
Fuck it.
Oh look, I had a little quick anecdote. Last show that we played in Sydney last year, it was like a New Year's Eve show. They have like a barbecue and burger place that's attached to Crowbar, and I decided, because we were getting a little bit of a discount on the food, I decided to get this massive barbecue platter that, after the fact, I read that it fed 2 to 3 people.
Platter.
It was a huge platter of barbecue, and I felt so sick on stage. So I'm very sorry to everybody that attended that show. But
you live and you learn.
Yeah, you live and you learn. So I won't be doing that again. I will not be eating an obscene amount of food, despite what I just said before. I take it all back.
Oh my god. Oh my god. After the set.
After the set, it'll be okay.
Amazing. Liam, thank you so much for chatting with Knotfest today. We can't wait for the set. Knotfest is happening in just a week's time, so I know you're like going straight into like a hectic rehearsal for the rest of the week.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Awesome.
See you there.